Which NHL bench boss has done the best job of leading his team this year, and which freshman has impressed the most in their first season in the Bigs? Hey everyone, welcome into another edition of Off the Post. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun sports columnist Steve Simmons and Postmedia hockey columnist Bruce Garrioch. And guys, with just a few weeks left in the regular season, it's time to start looking ahead to who may be taking home some hardware come June at the NHL Awards. And we'll start on the bench with the Jack Adams Award, which goes to the coach adjudged to have contributed the most to his team's success. Steve, we'll start with you. This award generally goes to the team that was the most surprising relative to expectations compared to the actual best team in the regular season. Who do you like for the Jack Adams?
There are so many candidates that I'm almost glad I don't get a vote in this, because I'm not sure where I would go with that vote. If the Washington Capitals make the playoffs, I don't know how they can, but if they do make the playoffs, I think Spencer Carberry has to be right there in the talk for Coach of the Year. And I say the same thing about the Philadelphia Flyers. If they're in the playoffs, then you're talking John Tortorella, because those teams aren't very good, and they're played to a level that was beyond what they should have been. And from the day Chris Knobloch was hired in Edmonton, which was November the 12th, the Edmonton Oilers are 42, 14, and 4, the best record in hockey. So you look at him too, and all that said, probably Rick Tocchet's going to win, because the Vancouver Canucks have been a very good team from the beginning of the season to now. They weren't a very good team last year. They were behind the Ottawa Senators and behind the Buffalo Sabres and behind teams that the Detroit Red Wings and behind teams that were not considered to be very good. And they've been in first place in the West all year long, and have never really slipped from there.
It's interesting because we're basically thinking of the same people. And I know that the Coach of the Year is not a longevity award, okay? But something has to be said for the job that John Cooper has done in Tampa Bay, and he's never been the Coach of the Year. And the other guy I think we have to talk about, and I know he won it last year, is Jim Montgomery. I've seen in a lot of places that Jim Montgomery might be one of the best coaches in the National Hockey League. I totally agree with you on your take on Tocchet and Spencer Carberry and John Tortorella, but I this is just me. I don't think Tortorella is going to be back in Philadelphia next year. I think he's going upstairs, and I think there's a sense and some talk in league circles that Craig Berube may end up behind that bench next season, and now some of that may be conjecture because he makes his home in Philadelphia, but there certainly is some discussion. Tortorella is starting to pull the strings again. He sits as captain. That hasn't worked. They're in trouble. They're in big trouble heading down the stretch here. I think when I look at Coach of the Year, again, not a longevity award, but I don't know how we can just keep saying that John Cooper shouldn't be Coach of the Year at some point.
Well, I'm going to put him in with someone else, even though he's got the 2 Stanley Cups and 2 other trips to the Stanley Cup final. There's the Coach of the Year award, and there's the Coach of the Year's award. And if there was such a thing, then Cooper definitely would be that guy, and Rod Brindamore would be like the Coach of the Decade. Because every single season, that team plays like he plays. I mean, it's just so impressive to watch. And I want to go back to Montgomery for just 1 second, because they lost Patrice Bergeron. They lost David Krejci. They had injuries. Everything was there for the Boston Bruins to fall apart. They're the second best team in the East. Please explain to me how they're doing that. And so,
why, Steve? You know why they're doing it? Because it's become it's kind of like those other coaches you mentioned, Rod Brindamore, and it's expected of them. It's become expected of them.
And I want to, just for a second, please don't laugh, I want to mention Sheldon Keefe. And I want to mention Sheldon Keefe because the Leafs haven't had very good goaltending this season, and uncertain goaltending this season. And that defense, let's be honest, it's a dog's breakfast. So he's got a defense that's a dog's breakfast. He's got goaltending. He doesn't know who the heck's in goal and how they're going to play. And he's got very little depth up front outside of his stars. And their Leafs are going to have another 105-point season. And nobody likes to say anything good about Sheldon Keefe, but I'm just going to say, I don't know if anybody could have done better with this sort of dog's breakfast of a roster that they have now.
No, I think he's done a good job. I wouldn't laugh. Should his name be into the mix? Sure, it should be in the mix. But again, there's another guy who's saddled by expectations, Steve.
One more name to throw: Pete DeBoer. The Dallas Stars are you can when you watch them, you know how well they're coached. You know the structure in that team. You know how solid that lineup is, and they're the second or third best team in the NHL. That doesn't happen by accident, and they're getting that. They're second or third in the NHL. Their goalie hasn't been very good this year. Jake Ottinger hasn't played to the level he's played before. So Pete DeBoer's name should be, to me, it's going to be. I bet you Tocchet's going to win the thing because he's Mr. Popular. But there's 7 or 8 guys that you could easily give the award to, and then we have our sort of career achievement guys.
Well, and it's interesting, Les, just to go full circle, I think if they make the playoffs, I think the first guy you mentioned at the start is Spencer Carberry. I think he's done a terrific job in Washington.
Yeah. And that's another dog's breakfast of a roster.
Yeah, well, if there's another guy that might get the consideration, had they been doing it earlier, maybe it's Andrew Brunette in Nashville with the way the Predators have been playing.
Excuse both of us.
Oh, yeah.
That he should be right in the mix with everybody. I mean, what a job this guy's done with that team. They really are a hard team to play against. And again, they don't have a lot of depth there. But boy, are they getting great play out of their top players. And when you get that kind of great play out of your top players, coaching plays a big role in that.
Yeah, pulling the plug on the U2 concert might have been the best move any coach has done so far this season. Well, when we've got all these candidates for the Jack Adams Award, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of front-runners for the Calder Trophy, Bruce. Connor Bedard has been leading the way before he suffered a broken jaw, but since returning 24 points in 21 games, it would be a shock if he doesn't win it. What do you think we've learned about the likely Calder winner in his first pro season?
Well, I think what we've learned is that he's got to look, his plus minus is like the temperature in Alaska right now. But I think if you look at it, what we've learned about him is that he's lived up to the hype. He's a smart young player. He's not afraid to get involved. He's got the skills to for lack of a better word, to pay the bills. He's getting it done. He was under a lot of pressure going into Chicago, Steve. They tried to put a support system for him in place with Nick Foligno and Corey Perry. Obviously, it didn't work out with Perry, but I think he's done a terrific job of living up to the hype. And there would, look, people mentioned Brock Faber. Brock Faber may be a good name to mention, or Luke Hughes, but this is going to Bedard, and it's going to Bedard probably in a landslide.
I don't think it's going to Bedard in a landslide, and I'm a huge Bedard guy. So but I think Brock Faber has been so good on defense for the Minnesota Wild that you have to, as a voter, and we're both voters, what you have to do is sit down and break down what did one guy accomplish. Never mind the hype and never mind what their expectations were. What did you accomplish on the ice? Now, in fairness to Bedard, who was hurt and is playing with a rec league team in Chicago, the fact that he's a point a game is let's give us, let's bow down and say that's unbelievable. Also unbelievable, I don't care who you are. If you're a 24-minute a game defenseman as a rookie and you take over as the number one defenseman on any team, they're not in the playoffs right now, but on any team, and Faber's done that, then I think you have to sit back and think. And this reminds me a little bit of the year Wendell Clark didn't win the Rookie of the Year award. He lost to Gary Suter. And that was because Suter in the last or the third of the season just took off and became a great player. And I don't think Faber's going to win, but I think it's going to be a much closer race, Bruce, than you think it's going to be. And I just, for a moment, because I'm in love with the family, I'm going to mention Luke Hughes.
Yeah.
He's not going to win.
I think his team has to be in there.
He's probably going to finish third or fourth. What a player this young guy is, watching him in New Jersey. He's just getting better and better and better. And he's like his older brothers, Jack and Quinn. You can have your own Hughes Corporation and have a team on your own, and you'd have a better roster than the Rec League Blackhawks do.
I wanted to mention the goalie in Carolina too, but I would just botch his name. It starts with a K.
Yes, I understand.
Kochetkov.
Yes.
How do you say it?
Kochetkov.
There you go.
There you go.
I would.
You know what? I thought you sneezed.
That might be his nickname.
Rob, at least you brought it.
Yeah.
Well, lots of great candidates for both the Jack Adams and Calder Trophy. Who do you think should be taking home the hardware? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Steve Simmons and Bruce Garrioch, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week on another edition of Off the Post.